I think you said yesterday, right? So it's a big change in 24 hours from Peru to here. I'm sure we'll hear more of that wonderful trip. It's good to have her back. Is Colin over there, or did he went downstairs? My grandson was here this morning. I got to have guy time with him yesterday. It was a lot of fun. So this morning, we're going to talk a little bit about the story of Xerxes, who was a Persian king who had conquered some of Israel. We're going to talk about a guy named Haman, who was Xerxes' right-hand man. Got a lady named Esther, who we actually talked about Esther a little bit at Bible study, and her uncle named Mordecai. It's a great story. It's in our Old Testament, the book of Esther, and it tells more than I could possibly do in 5 or 10 minutes. It's a good book to read. It would make an excellent movie. I'm not sure that they ever have. But it goes like this. Xerxes, who many of us know, was a great Persian king, and he conquered a lot of the Mediterranean area. And the Jewish people were part of that conquering, and they were his kingdom and his slaves. And there's a guy named Mordecai who was an upstanding, upright, wonderful Jewish guy who loved the Lord, and he was very firm in his faith. And he had a niece, a lady named Esther, who was very beautiful. And she ends up becoming part of Xerxes' harem, and he likes her so much that eventually she becomes queen. She becomes his queen. And there's always a bad guy in these stories, and the bad guy is Haman. And Haman is someone who doesn't like the Jewish people at all. And what's supposed to happen is he's also very important to Xerxes' kingdom. So when he goes through the city and so forth, everyone's supposed to bow down to him as he walks by. But Mordecai, he's not about to do that. He doesn't bow down to Haman, and Haman doesn't like this at all. So he manages to convince the king, Xerxes, to issue a decree to have the Jewish people persecuted and killed. So Mordecai is very obviously concerned about this, and he manages to go to his niece Esther and say to her, can you talk to Xerxes and get him to change his mind about this decree? Can you get him to understand that Haman is unjustly persecuting our people? And Esther does this. She approaches the king to get him to change his mind. But she does it in a very, very faithful way. Because to enter into the king's presence without permission is instant death. Unless the king decides to raise his scepter and point it at the person who comes into his presence. So she enters into his presence without permission, which could possibly mean death. And he does speak to her. He raises his scepter to her, and she's allowed to speak. And she convinces him that this Haman guy is really, really bad. And the king changes his mind. And the long story is, short, is that the bad guy, Haman, he ends up being killed. He gets his just reward, if you will. And the Jewish people are protected and saved because Queen Esther is willing to risk her very life for her people. It's a wonderful story. It's about 8 chapters long. Good read. I suggest you go read the story of Esther. And just a little piece of Bible trivia. It's one of the 2 or 3 books in the Bible that never mention the word God. Yep. So if you get a Bible study quiz, there's Liz will answer.